For 20 years, you've trusted us to reinvent the standard in sports nutrition products. We don't plan on stopping, just like you.
One of the major questions, or I should say more persistent questions, is why did I walk away from bodybuilding? Why did I choose 2001 to quit being a bodybuilder? Some of you guys may know the story, some of you guys may not. It may sound like sour grapes, but it might sound like very rational thinking in the life and times of a bodybuilder who gave up a career in football at 17 years old to pursue a dream of becoming one of the best built men in the world against all the odds. 5'7", 200 pounds, a decorated football player in high school with opportunities to play at the next level. I chose to put down the helmet, take out the mouthpiece, kick off the cleats, put on some posing briefs and shave my body and splash a bunch of oil on and flex and pose in the mirror. And a lot of my family and the majority of my friends thought I was nuts and I was crazy, but I was a man on a mission. And that mission would take me from being a teenage national champion to becoming a national champion 3 years out of high school, and to the Mr. Olympia stage where I would spend 13 of my 14 years as a professional competing against the biggest and the best men around the world. But something changed for me in 2001 when I decided to hang things up. Going into the Mr. Olympia contest, I had a lot of reasons why I no longer wanted to compete as a bodybuilder. One of the reasons was the acting president of the IFBB, Wayne DeMilia, had his thumb on the back of my neck throughout my career in terms of what I could and couldn't do. As a matter of fact, when I failed the very first Arnold Classic drug test back in 1990 after winning, a lot of people thought at 24 years old my career was going to be over.
Runner-up spot, $25,000 to Mike Ashley. Mike Ashley.
But unbeknownst to a lot of fans, because we didn't have social media back then, in 1989, at the very first Arnold Classic Sports Festival 30 years ago, I was suspended 5 weeks out from that competition after training for it and getting injured. Wayne DeMilia thought that since I had signed the contract and I put my name to it, that in spite of my injury, in spite of my doctor's notification, that I should suffer the consequences of a suspension. And that's how I started my pro career after my 88 Mr. Olympia debut. And then throughout my career, there was just certain incidences that I wasn't really on board with in terms of how the sport of bodybuilding was being run, but I stayed the course because I wanted to be Mr. Olympia. But in 2001, at the press conference, I had met the edge, and I'd been pushed over it at the press conference when I was challenged by one of the IFBB judges about my appearance not changing in 10 years. However, she was from Texas, and she would be judging me in a short 24 hours, and I challenged her back. And I said that if you've already made up your mind on what I look like, then you shouldn't be a judge. And the one thing that Wayne DeMilia did do, by popular demand, was dismiss this judge from the judging panel. However, what Wayne DeMilia didn't do was enforce the rules of the IFBB at the time. You see, Kevin Levrone had competed in that contest without registering as an IFBB athlete and then not signing the Olympia contract. And Wayne DeMilia, being the acting president, allowed Kevin into the contest and blamed Joe Weider, which meant he didn't enforce the rules, which meant Jay Cutler stayed in the contest, and Jay Cutler would wind up being the Olympia runner-up. So if things were followed to the letter of the law, I would have been second place in 2001. I probably would have came back in 2002.
No longer am I doing it just for myself. I realize there's a lot of people pulling for me, supporting me. I'm trying not to let them down, but at the same time keep my head up and remember where I came from and keep my eye on where I'm going.
But because things were being run the way they were by the person that was in charge, I chose to go a different path. I chose to go a path of life, liberty, and freedom, because I felt like it was a dictatorship at that time in 2001, and Wayne DeMilia would be doing whatever he wanted with whomever he wanted, however he wanted to do. And I wasn't on board with that. So I chose at the tender age of 35, 36 to walk away from bodybuilding and move on to a different aspect of life, which included marriage and children and promotions. And I don't look back with any regret. It's been 17 years. And the Olympia has survived and has actually thrived in my retirement. And I've got to give a lot of that credit to contest promoter Robin Chang and, of course, the IFBB Pro League president, Mr. Jim Mannion. But the demise of my interest as a bodybuilder came at the hands of Wayne DeMilia. because of what he was doing with the sport of bodybuilding. And it would be only 3 short years after 2001 that Wayne DeMilia would be unceremoniously fired from his position for trying to overthrow the Mr. Olympia, along with trying to take over Joe Weider's baby, which is basically the IFBB. He tried to steal the federation out from underneath Joe. And at that point in time, they fired him. And of course, in comes Jim Mannion to salvage the IFBB, as it were, the Pro League and the Mr. Olympia Championship. So I don't have a really good taste leaving 2001, but the best thing that I could have done for Shawn Ray and Shawn Ray Productions was to move on and to promote the sport, to market its athletes, to give back in a way that wasn't happening. One of the demands that I made was that all the athletes competing in the Mr. Olympia should receive prize money. And in 2003, when I was the athlete's rep, I made sure that happened, and every athlete got paid $4,000 for participating. The following year, every athlete got $2,000 for participating. They were worthy of some compensation. I went on, after retiring from bodybuilding, to continue giving back to the sport by creating the Shawn Ray Classic, which I'm honored and privileged to say Phil Heath was his first pro win. And of course, Kai Green in 2007 won the second Shawn Ray Colorado Pro Classic. And since then, I promoted seminars and muscle camps around the world in South Africa, Ireland, Australia. And bodybuilding has been very, very good to me in order to continue making a living, giving back, and doing the things that I love. But my last Mr. Olympia experience wasn't a pleasant one. And although I wound up in 4th place in my last Olympia, I wasn't a happy camper. I look back with very fond memories as in terms of what's happened in the sport of bodybuilding. But in 2001, under the helm of Wayne DeMilia, it was a very tumultuous time, and it would get even worse before he was fired. And now we're living in green pastures. I'm very happy with what's happened to bodybuilding. I'm very happy with what's happening in our industry and the opportunities being given to all of the athletes, including myself, here reporting for Generation Iron.